All right. Getting the stream going today. Taking a while. Make sure it's muted. I wonder if I put this thing in hardwire, if it would run any faster. All right, let's be on the record in case number 2020CR178, captioned State of Kansas versus Jacob Schell. Would the parties announce their appearances, please?
May it please the court, State of Kansas appears by Assistant District Attorney Kyle Custer, appearing via Zoom.
May it please the court, the defendant appears via Zoom, and also the counsel Jeffrey Liker also via Zoom.
All right, we are here set down for a plea hearing. Mr. Schell, to take up your plea, I'm going to have to ask you a bunch of questions here. To do that, I'm going to have you sworn in here in a second. If I ask you a question you don't understand, you make sure that you tell me that so that you and I can discuss it and make sure we're on the same page. Also, if before answering a question you want to talk to Mr. Liker in private, I can make that happen. I just send you guys to what's called a breakout room. You could talk to him without any of us hearing you. First things first, I need you to unmute yourself so we can have this conversation. All right. Did you understand those two things I just told you?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. If you would raise your right hand, my court reporter will swear you in.
Solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Schell, how far in did you go in school?
I graduated high school.
All right. You reading right okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
As you sit here today, are you under the influence of any alcohol or drugs or prescription medicine that might cloud your mind, keep you from understanding what you're doing today?
No, sir.
Feel like your mind's clear?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you know what you're charged with?
Yes, sir.
All right. You understand you don't have to change your plea from not guilty to guilty. If you wanted to maintain your not guilty plea, you would have an absolute right to a trial by a jury in this case. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
At that trial, Mr. Liker would be able to assist you throughout. He would cross-examine and confront all of the state's witnesses. He could challenge all of their evidence. He would call any witnesses that you wanted called. And if they didn't want to come to court, he could use the subpoena power of the court to make them come. Do you understand all that?
Yes, sir.
All right. At that trial, you would have a right to testify, but you'd also have a right not to testify. And if you chose not to testify, the state couldn't use that against you to argue that you must be guilty. Understand that?
Yes, sir.
If we had that trial, at the end of that trial, you were convicted, you would have a right to appeal that conviction to an appellate court. If you didn't have the money for that, a lawyer would be appointed to do it for you. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, if we go forward with this plea today, you're going to be giving up all of those rights that I just talked about, and you're not going to have any trial either to a court or a jury. You understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Any questions about any of that that I just went over with you?
No, sir.
All right. I'm going to show you my copy of the plea petition. I want you to tell me if you can. Can you see that document?
Not at the moment. It says you're screen sharing, but I don't see a document yet.
Okay.
Yes, I do now.
All right. You recognize that document?
Yes, I do.
All right. Now, I don't know if we're in person or electronically, but did Mr. Liker go over all of this with you, this document?
Yes, he did.
Feel like you understand everything in it?
Yes, I do.
All right. There's a recitation of what the plea agreement is in here, and I'm turning to it right now. It says that you're going to plead count one of the information, which is possession of methamphetamine. All the other counts will be dismissed. There may be a special rule that requires or that results in what's called a presumption of prison on the pre-sentence investigation. However, even if that applies, the parties are going to agree that compelling reasons exist and that you should receive a departure from the prison recommendation and a granting of probation. The parties are also agreeing to recommend that I give you the standard number in the underlying sentence in the appropriate grid box. Is that your understanding of the entire plea agreement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Has anybody promised you anything other than what I just read to you?
No, Your Honor.
Anyone place any force or threats against you to make you plead today?
No, sir.
All right. So I see in this agreement that there's a lot of talk about what the parties are going to recommend to the court. You understand, I'm going to listen really closely to what the lawyers and yourself have to say about this and take into consideration those recommendations. But at the end of the day, I'm not bound by them, and I can give you any sentence that the law allows me to give you. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Either Mr. Custer or Mr. Liker, do you have an understanding what you believe the defendant's criminal history to be?
Judge, in speaking with my client, it appears that he's going to fall in the C box. And I think that's the result of some person misdemeanors, perhaps constituting that person felony that would get him there. We also think that because of prior drug convictions, he could potentially fall under a special rule that would make this presumptive prison case. At any rate, the agreement is that all parties are going to recommend probation, but we do expect him to fall in that C box with perhaps a different special rule applying even after.
All right. Mr. Custer, you agree with that?
Yeah, that sounds right, Judge.
Okay. So, Mr. Schell, I know Mr. Liker talked to you about what they expect your criminal history to be and where that would put you on the sentencing grid box. However, it's not going to be official until there's a pre-sentence investigation that everybody agrees is accurate as to your criminal history. So for today's purposes, what I have to do is assume that you have the very worst possible criminal history so that I can tell you the maximum that anybody can get for this crime. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. So the maximum that anybody could get for this crime would be 42 months in prison and a fine of $100,000. That sentence would carry 12 months of post-release supervision. Do you understand that's the maximum in this case?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Do you have any questions for either me or Mr. Liker about anything that we went over today?
No, sir.
All right. Mr. Liker, do you know any reason why your client should not plead guilty?
I do not, Judge. And just also for the record, we had continued this once before. This was Mr. Cuevas's case, and we tried to take the sentencing up very shortly after Mr. Cuevas got off. I did not have any of the police reports or discovery when I was assigned to the case. And so the district attorney's office got that to me pretty quick, and I hadn't gone over that with my client. So having done that, I think we're in a position where we can, with good conscience, go ahead and go forward with the plea. It is a good plea, and I think he should take it.
All right. Given that, Mr. Schell, I'll ask you, as to count one, possession of methamphetamine, a severity level 5 drug felony, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
All right. I'm going to ask the state to tell me what they think the evidence in this case would be. I want you to listen closely because when they're done, I'm going to ask you if that's what happened, okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Cup.
Give me one moment before I start on that. I've got to pull that up here really fast.
Sure.
Okay. Were this case to proceed to trial, state will present evidence to indicate that on February 12th of this year, at roughly 5 o'clock in the afternoon, officers were dispatched on a reported disturbance at 2819 Vista Avenue here in Kansas City, Kansas. Upon arrival, they found the defendant, Mr. Schell. They found him on the front porch. When they pulled up, he was digging through a black duffel bag on the front porch, and they searched Mr. Schell incident to the arrest and located a small plastic baggie with methamphetamine inside. That was located in Mr. Schell's front left pants pocket. That was later tested, and using TrueNarc drug identifier the next day was tested to and confirmed to be methamphetamine with a gross weight of 0.6 of a gram.
Mr. Schell, is that what happened in this case?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. I will find the defendant has freely, voluntarily, and intelligently entered his plea today. He understands the nature of the charges, the consequences of the plea. The state has provided a sufficient factual basis for a finding of guilt, and I will in fact find that the defendant is guilty. Per the plea agreement, all other counts will be dismissed. I'm ordering a pre-sentence investigation, and I will continue this sentencing pending that investigation. Let's take a look at the date and see what we have here. Will he need to get an alcohol and drug evaluation before sentencing? This isn't one of those Senate bill case where he has to. Okay, then we should have enough time. Let me see what my September 25th looks like. I know I have a few things set already, but if you would all start looking at your morning on September 25th.
Judge, I believe I'm going to be out of town starting on the 24th.
All right, so going outside the 25th then. Are you back by the 2nd, Mr. Leiker, of October?
Yeah, I should be.
All right, let's do 9 o'clock on October 2nd if you're available, Mr. Leiker.
I am, yeah.
And Mr. Custer, you're available as well, I assume?
Yes, Your Honor. Yeah.
October 2nd at 9 a.m. again by Zoom. We'll do it just like this. Mr. Schell, do you have a piece of paper or pencil? You can write down a number for me.
No, but I got a good memory. I should be able to remember it.
Judge,
All right.
I can email it to him real quick. Just go ahead and give it.
All right, 573-2846. That's the probation department. Mr. Leiker, have you by any chance been able to do a PSI request with your client yet?
I haven't.
Okay, here's what I'm gonna do. Do you have a blank copy? Because I can email you one if you don't.
If you could send me one, he and I'll go through it right now after the hearing,
Okay.
Judge, and I'll give him that number too.
All right, so I'm going to, and we're gonna be